Obviously a DAC exists in a space between your digital source, maybe your CD player, stream or PC, and your amplifier. The ADI-2 DAC sits at the bottom of a lineup of R2R Ladder DACs that Denafrips make. It's actually pretty conventional. You've got 2 optical and 2 RCA coax digital inputs with single-ended RCA and XLR balanced analog outputs. Then you've got an on-off button, input buttons, phase and mute buttons, and then there are oversampling and non-oversampling modes with DAC filters. Pretty simple really. If you want it simple, easiest way to explain R2R Ladder DACs, the old school original DACs if you like, is they use resistors to do each step of the digital to analog conversion for all the bits of data that make up the music. This DAC has 2 banks of resistors that do the DA, digital to analog conversion, one for the right and left channels, and it's a true balanced DAC because of that. If you want a bit more technical info, watch this. This ADI-2 sells for 1,100 Singapore dollars, which is about $800, about 700 euros or 600 pounds. And you can get it direct, but that's before any import taxes you might have to pay. So I don't have an exact price, but obviously check where you are. Some distributors are selling it a bit higher, but that accounts extra service that they can offer. Anyway, for these 3 DACs, I think if you like the sound of the ADI-2, you're going to buy it for that. If you like the Chord, the same, and obviously for the RME, and that might sound a bit of a stupid thing and too simplistic a thing to say, but this picking taster's choice decision could be based on tone. So I've said the RME ADI-2 DAC FS is a Qutest killer on its features and sound and headphone use. I've said that before. But considering the price of this Denafrips at around $800 and what it does, it's better value for money than the Chord. And that doesn't just mean cheaper or necessarily the better sounder. And I use the word necessarily advisorily because sound preferences are in the mix here too. But it gets you most of what the Chord can get for much less cash. Yeah, Simon, but what does this Denafrips actually sound like? How do we get on with it? Well, before we look at that, here are some more technical specs and how I connected it up. So the ADI-2 is a tonally warm DAC, as we might perhaps expect for a ladder DAC. It's perhaps +1 or 2 on the bass dial. The bass extends to Treble is notably refined and pretty much perfect, not edgily sibilant at all in the top registers. Sound staging is good and imaging is too, but it's just that lush, grassy tones of this DAC, not to be too pretentious, that are the main qualities of why you buy it. So when I played something like the track 3WW from Alt J's Relaxer album, this laying on thick bass is really evident. And I tried a bit of Amy Winehouse's Love is a Losing Game on Back to Black. 10 years since she died, I just can't believe it's gone so fast. And it's the same thing with tonality, but also it's a very natural DAC. Another one that everyone knows, Bridge Over Troubled Water on the definitive Simon & Garfunkel, or other albums, obviously that's a best of album, is just terrific with this DAC. So this thing is basically an acoustician's vinyl dream trip of a DAC at this money. Keep the music simple without complication. This ADI-2 is a delight. Maybe something like a female vocal or simple classical piano piece. I thought that the fact that it doesn't underwhelm me when I've been used to trying much more expensive DACs is a measure that this Denafrips performs well at the money, even when trying it on the Hagel PMC combo, which is a lot more expensive, combined expensive, it still performs. I did actually find though that detail was traded a touch for the sake of overall tone, which might not be for everyone if you want the detail piercing quality some Delta Sigma DACs can achieve, or a slightly more projected approach to detail. And I'm not talking about all out top end detail, but somewhat in the mid range. There is a feeling against the other DACs in this test that with the ADI-2 it's moved inwards a bit or masked by tone, but be aware I'm raising small issues for the sake of a fair balanced review to get this product to the person who wants it for what it does. Sometimes you can only do that if you mention negatives that on the flip side are positives for the person who wants those qualities. By the way, entering filter and NOS OS modes involves a little bit of button pressing finger gymnastics, if we could put it like that. But once you've done it, it's ingrained, so no real biggie. I slightly preferred the oversampling and sharp combos, the sharp filter, but like with most of these settings on DACs, it's mostly always, pretty much always, nuanced and slight. The Qutest is essentially the same as the Denafrips in ease of use. You've got digital in here and analog outputs here. No balance with the Chord though. With the Qutest using its coloured lighting for its kind of diving bell window is in comparison to the Denafrips LED row lights, and using input and filter colour buttons for the Chord to the Aries touch type buttons. And here's the thing, right? When you flip to the Qutest, you notice immediately the sound staging extends. But remember, its price is almost doubled. But it's kind of maybe like a boxer's arm on the backswing being able to knock out someone outside the ring. Is that pretentious? Well, teetering may be, but let's go with it because it does tend to connote, you know, the depth that this Qutest can achieve. You could call it spaciness or just placement of everything in, you know, articulated points around the music's canvas. Is that a really bad, pretentious one? I don't know, but anyway. Also, another thing to say is bass definition, speed and accuracy really does come on. I think that this sound staging is the kind of modus operandi of the Qutest, and its main trait, as well as picking out all the detail and micro detail in the music without being smearing and being speedy too. And I've used mine on so much kit to get this pinpoint understanding of it. But the thing is that this detail means you need to think about system matching gear more. So with speakers like these monitor audios or KEFs, you might prefer the Qutest. With the PMCs, the Denafrips, again, it's going to be dependent upon the music you like. With the Qutest, some edge and treble comes back with the Hagel and PMC pairing on some recordings, but not so much with the KEF or monitor audio Hagel pairings. Always recording dependent though, I found too. But despite not being anywhere near as easy listening as the Denafrips, I'm not talking about Julio Iglesias, I'm crazy, but obviously I'm talking about tone here. And I'd say that the Chord, for all its soundscaping and detail and bass speed, is the improver. No revelations though, because remember I said it's almost double the money. But I'd actually make a proviso to all this, meaning that what I said before about the Aries versus Chord might be incidental to you, and it's a big proviso, and that's that I know some people who prefer the Aries 2 to the Qutest, and this is, I think, down to tonal matching and without the sibilance the Chord gives with some kit, and I emphasize some. And I think that because tone is such a big part of preference in hi-fi, undoubtedly the Aries 2 will drop into any hi-fi without as much palaver or being finicky in system matching with these kind of easy listener credentials. So that's who the Aries 2 is for, really. The RME ADI-2 DAC FS at around £1,000, similar in euros, and I think it's about $1,300, $1,400, although don't quote me on that. This is a Delta Sigma based DAC with headphone outputs, IEMs and normal 1/4 inch. It's also got a parametric equalizer and balanced outputs, and has a volume control too, and you can use it as a preamp. I'd say that it's probably a bit more balanced with tone bang neutral than the Denafrips, and it resolves a bit more, being speedier with bass, and it's a touch more mid-centric to the Chord's expansiveness and against the Aries thicker set presentation. Perhaps it's not really comparable because it's another 30 to 40% in price, but this RME is still a really hard act to follow, I can tell you. The Aries 2 has more soundstage over the RME, but when I use the RME in DAC loop mode with my Hagel H390, not so. One thing that did slightly annoy me is that I burred one of the screws when I took the case off, so I don't know how I'm going to sort that out. It's annoyed me really because I'm going to have one screw missing at one point, and it's on the top as well. So on balance, I think the Aries 2 is very capable at the money, and it does fit its price bracket pretty well. I prefer it to DACs in the CXN version 2 streamer I have from Cambridge Audio for that lovely tonal ease. But the Aries 2 is a dedicated DAC, so it's going to be better considering it's similar money. Also, the Aries 2 is a little bit more impressive than a £500-ish musical Fidelity MX-DAC I reviewed a while back. Also, it has similar tonal character. So I can really recommend the Aries 2 if you want to tame an already forward hi-fi, or it's used in a hi-fi where a less detailed DAC won't be limiting to the rest of your kit. Maybe if you've got forward speakers on that score. Also, you'd use this DAC if you aren't pairing with hugely resolving cheaper kit too, or simply if detail retrieval just isn't high on priority and more tonal mass is your bag. But I think you're going to buy this DAC primarily if you want tone. You're sensitive to sibilance, and it very much makes sense for people coming into DACs from vinyl listening. My recommendation would be to try the Aries 2 against the Denafrips Venus 2 that I reviewed, since the Venus 2 gets you full on detail and tone. But again, it's going to depend upon sound preferences too, and the rest of your gear, the quality of your gear, and all of this is going to be different to me. But remember always that hi-fi reviews are always for shortlists, so try yourself before you buy. Hopefully people appreciate the time and effort that I put into production of my videos. It does take some time. You know, I hope it's a bit like comparing the output of Lady Gaga to Osama Bin Laden. Osama used to put an awful lot less effort into his videos.
you.